You know what I don't like about most drum lesson videos here on YouTube? They're really built to just make you sound better playing drums all by yourself. But what if you play drums so well that most of the musicians that you know want you on their next gig or in their band? Well, stick around and I'm going to show you exactly what to practice to make that happen. Hey there, if this is your first time on the channel, I'm Brian, and if you dig this video, please subscribe right down below, click the like, and make sure to leave a question or comment too while you're there. The goal for the end of April is to try and get 1,000 subs for my channel, and if you find any of this material super useful, and if it helps you with your drumming and to sound better, then please, by all means, come back and share it with your friends. So today, what are we talking about? Well, we're going to talk about something that I believe is one of the most important things about being a drummer who plays music with other musicians. And if you're looking to get into that professional tier where you're actually getting paid to play drums in a band or on a gig or at a recording session, consistency is one of the most important things that I feel like a lot of drummers are lacking these days. So if you're looking for some kind of lesson that's some kind of real hot lick that's gonna let everybody know how good you are, you can keep going. This isn't your channel, this isn't your video. But if you're looking for something you can practice today, right now, that's going to make you better, that's going to get your playing much more focused and consistent, and get you sounding more like all those professional drummers that you really dig a whole lot. This is exactly the video for you. But before we get to the exercises, I got a story I want to tell you. So back in the late 90s, when I just started my career as a recording session musician here in Atlanta, I had the wonderful opportunity to work with an engineer-producer, a guy named Harry O'Brien. And if you're not familiar with that name, doesn't mean anything. The biggest hit I think he was known for was engineering and working on the tag team hit, Ooh, There It Is. So this was not too long after he had worked on that and got his gold or platinum record or whatever. He was incredibly helpful. It was probably the third or fourth session that I had done for pay after moving to Atlanta. And we were working on a country record, and we were playing a 4-on-the-floor groove. After we did a couple of takes, he came over the talk back and he said, "Guys, let's take a break just a second. And Brian, come in here. I want you to see if you like the sound of these drums." Everybody else goes out for a smoke break or a beer break or whatever they were doing. And I go into the control room, and Harry pulls a chair over. He goes, "Come have a seat. I want you to listen to something real quick." So he solos the drums, and he starts playing this 4-on-the-floor groove we had just recorded. And he goes, "Do you hear the same thing that I'm hearing?" And I'm like, I hear me playing the groove. He said, "Listen to the alignment of your snare drum and your bass drum." And I'm going to try and demonstrate a little bit of what I heard. Now, when I was playing with the entire band, I didn't notice what you just heard. I didn't hear how inconsistently the quarter note beats were landing. And I certainly didn't hear the inconsistency. I didn't feel the inconsistency between my kick drum and my snare drum. But when he soloed up those tracks, man, it was like putting the hugest spotlight, it was so bright, it was like bright like the sun, on the problem. The problem was my consistency to land the kick drum and the snare drum together. And what was happening was all of a sudden it started to pull the time around. When I couldn't get those things locked together, then the rest of the time started getting a little soupy, a little swimmy. Instead of berating me or saying, "Well, just fix it and we'll fix it in Pro Tools." Pro Tools could do it, but it wasn't super easy to be able to chop these things up and align them. He just told me, he said, "Listen, go in there for just a second while everybody's on break and just play that groove for about a minute and just concentrate on making sure that that kick drum and that snare drum line up exactly Every single time. Feel what it feels like. And so I did. I went in there and I spent a couple of minutes trying to get my barometer calibrated to what this feels like and what it sounds like. And I don't know how much better it was on the session, but once everybody came back in, after a couple of takes, we were done. After a couple of takes, Harry came over to talk back. He said, "Yeah, guys, I think we got it that time. Come on in and let's listen." And the rest of the day went incredibly well. That sent me back to the practice room the very next day, working on this kind of consistent alignment of the notes that I was playing in the bass drum, but also in all of the different parts of the kit while I'm playing a groove. And I started to listen to the choreography of the groove, but I was also listening to the individual alignment of the components. How well were they falling together? If I noticed that my bass drum wasn't in alignment with what the hi-hat was telling me should be the time, then I needed to investigate what that problem was. If for some reason I noticed that the snare drum was kind of waffling between being on top of the beat and being ahead of the beat and being a little behind the beat, and I really tried to focus that in and get to the point where not only could I hear it, I could feel that time consistently. And that's the kind of practice that we're talking about. This isn't the kind of thing that you're going to play for 20 seconds and be done. With each one of these examples, I really want you to sit there for a minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, and really feel what it feels like. Really get some muscle memory for where that note in the bass drum is along the continuum of 16th notes. And then zoom back out and listen to what it feels like and it sounds like in relationship to the rest of the parts of the kit. And as you go down through each one of these exercises, every one of these rhythms is going to present its own puzzle for you. What is it that either naturally lets you fall into the right space with that rhythm, or what is it that keeps you from being able to get that thing seated in exactly the right place? The other musicians, they don't want to have to guess about where your next beat is going to land, where your next bass drum or your next snare drum is going to land in respect to the time. They want to be able to feel a real confidence that you're playing super consistent, beat to beat, bar to bar, and phrase to phrase. So let's start looking at some exercises that are going to help you with getting that together. Now, you'll see the example here on your screen that I'm playing, but if you want the entire sheet, we don't have time to go over it here, but if you want the entire sheet of exercises, there's a link below in the description where you can download that for free. So let's talk about your bass drum. Now, first off, we've got to talk about how to have an awareness of the time. And when I talk about awareness of the time, I'm talking about knowing where every single beat falls and everything that's in between those beats. Where does that fall as well? So this first exercise is to just go in and try and nail the bass drum right on the quarter note along with the metronome. This is what it's going to sound like. Now, if you go back, record yourself, and listen to what you just did, how closely did you land right on that quarter note? Now, if you've never done these kind of exercises before, there's some things that you need to know about what you're trying to pay attention to. Now, the first thing I'm trying to pay attention to is I'm trying to pay attention to the actual beats themselves. Where does the quarter note fall, or where does the beat fall? So I have an awareness of that. But my awareness of where that is exactly in time, it isn't just a point on a line. There's a whole lot of space in between each one of those beats that I need to be aware of. So if you'll listen to those 16th notes that are going on behind every one of those beats, I need an awareness of the space in between the beats. Now, I actually use a counting method that's similar to what's called Kanakal. It's an Indian system of counting to have an awareness of the time. And in this case, for 16th notes, I'm going to use the syllables ba, ka, ta, ka. You could count 1 e and a, 2 e and a, 3 e and a, 4 e and a, and that works. But for me, I feel like I have an even more visceral experience with all the subdivisions if I use this counting system that's more syllable based. So here's what it's going to sound like if I'm counting along with those syllables. Baka taka, 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 Now I can put that awareness up in my hands, sort of like this. And that's a good way to get started, having an awareness of where the time is. Play the 16th notes. You can do it with single strokes. You can do it with a single hand. Doesn't too much matter. Now, once you've got that awareness happening, then we're going to take a look at that rhythm. You're going to internalize that 16th note, and you're going to start to play that quarter note along with your internal 16th note. We're not going to externalize the time at all. We're going to make it all inside. So here's what that's going to sound like if I'm thinking and singing my bakatakas. Now, I can't help but move my body when I'm doing this sort of thing. So if you're stiff and rigid and doing this, it's probably going to be more difficult for you. Really try and get that subdivision into your body and try and make it really a part of how you feel the time. You're going to see your awareness of the time is going to be heightened by this full body experience. So now I'm going to play those 16th notes just in the right hand along with the click, and then I'm going to play that same rhythm on the bass drum. We're going to see if we can lock this thing in. We're going to lock in the 16th notes to the click, and then I'm also going to lock my foot both into the click and into those 16th notes that I'm playing. All that should be locked into my internal clock, which is just going the whole time. Let's check it out. Now, when you're practicing this, I'm going to welcome you to practice this both with the bass drum going into the head and staying there, and I also practice with the bass drum coming out of the head. It has a very, very different feel in terms of how the time's going to come out of your body. And also, depending on how you muffle your bass drum, you may have a very, very different sound if you let that beater come back versus leaving it in the head. Leaving it in the head is going to make the note a lot shorter. The bass drum's going to have less length to it. It'll have more attack and more point to it, but definitely less length. Depending on how you muffle your bass drum, you should both feel and hear a little bit more of a length to the note, or more of a fatness to the note if you let that beater come back. So practice it both ways. Get comfortable with both of those. So next, after you've really got those 16th notes dialed in, you've got your hi-hat super consistent, you're nailing all of those downbeats with your bass drum foot, then you're going to swap to 8th notes in the hi-hat hand. I'm still going to internalize the 16th note, baka taka, baka taka, baka taka, but I'm only playing half as much. And this is part of the secret of playing with a lot of consistency, with a much higher batting average for your consistency, is that you're thinking twice as fast as you're playing, really. You're thinking about more of the subdivisions than you're actually voicing in this particular example. All right, really concentrate on the counting first. Your attention needs to go to the vocalization of the time, the bakatakas. Then extend your attention over to the hi-hat. How well is the hi-hat in alignment with the thing that you're internalizing, that rhythm you're internalizing? And then focus on your bass drum. How well is it landing with the internalization of the beat? And then listen to the entire thing. And that's the thing that makes practice so exciting for me, is that I'm not just playing this and playing it for 20 seconds and going, well, I know how to play that, let's move on to the next thing. What I'm really trying to do is I'm trying to focus my attention in different areas of the kit and then zoom back out so that I can hear the entire thing all at once. And when I can hear the entire thing and I can have an awareness of the time, I've got a much better shot of not only being able to play consistently and hold the time together really, really solid, but then I can begin to extend my listening to the other musicians that are around me. If you can develop this awareness and then begin to focus your attention on the bass player, focus your attention for a while on the guitar player, on a keyboard player, on any other instrumentals, on the vocalist. How is the vocalist feeling the time? All of a sudden, then you get this holistic approach to playing the music with other people where you're not just listening to drums. So many times I go and I watch Weekend Warriors play, or I may sit in at an open mic or jam session or something, and I can always tell the drummers who are only listening to themselves because they never really seem to lock with the other musicians that they're playing with. And for some reason, the things that they play never seem to really gel with what's happening around. Maybe they're playing a bass drum rhythm that doesn't match what the bass player is playing. Maybe they're playing their subdivisions with a swing that isn't present in any of the other instruments. Or maybe they're feeling the beat in a place that's really disconnected from what the vocalist is doing or what a soloist is doing. And they're not really paying attention to anybody but themselves, just the drums. And so to get to that point where you can extend your attention and you can listen beyond just what you're doing, you have to first get the ability to focus your attention on different individual parts of the kit, then zoom out, be able to hear the whole thing together, hear it against the click. How well are you playing with your metronome? And then that's going to begin to give you the ability to extend your listening reach beyond the drum set and into the rest of the band. Now, one thing I want to welcome you to do is record yourself playing every one of these exercises, both the one we're talking about and all the rest of the ones on the page. Because what you think's happening in real time may not actually be what's happening. It's not until you sit and you listen back to yourself and you listen to yourself in relationship to the click that you really begin to understand, where are you hearing the time? Where are you feeling the time? Where are you placing the time within the construct of what the metronome or the click track in this case has put together for you? And when you can get that objective view, then you can really get an idea of where your clock is aligned and what kind of things you need to do to get that clock in more strict alignment with the objective time source, which is the click track. You're borrowing the clock from the metronome right now, but eventually you're going to learn how to lock into your own internal clock and only use the metronome as a reference. And that way you're not borrowing from the time that the click track is giving you. You're just locking what's already there into what you're hearing coming out of the click. And that's going to make for a much different playing experience than if you're being dragged along by your ear by the click track. Now, let's get this thing into a full groove, because until we get it into a full groove, it doesn't do us any good musically. Let's go ahead and add the snare drum on 2 and 4. So we're playing eighth notes in the hi-hat, we're playing quarter notes in the bass drum, and then we're playing 2 and 4, so we get a basic 4 on the floor rock pattern. Let's listen to what that sounds like with the click. Now you'll notice that I started by vocalizing out loud, and then I brought it internal. I stopped letting my mouth move as I was playing so that I could stop externalizing the time and bring the time inside. It's a different experience when you're not externalizing any of this time strict to where your clock is. You're really trying to just push it down into where we think of our internal clock as being, is in our heart, basically. You'll see a lot of times I'll start by counting with out loud, counting with my mouth, using this conical type system, this bakataka. All of a sudden, it'll disappear. Well, when it disappears from my lips, it hasn't disappeared from my awareness. It's gone straight down into my internal clock, and that's where I'm really trying to pull my awareness of the time down from my clock. Let's take a look at the B rhythm, which is the E of the beat, and I'll show you what I mean. So at first, I'm going to turn on my metronome, and we're going to internalize that 16th note. And I'm looking at that rhythm on the page, and I'm thinking about what does it sound like? If I were to count it, it would be one E and two E and E E E E E E. So just the bass drum alone, I'm going to try and get that thing to settle in to where the subdivision is. And then I move over to 16ths with the hi-hat and then 8ths in the hi-hat. I'll play a couple of bars of each one for you. Once you feel comfortable with that, you feel like you've got it pretty well aligned, and you can go for 30 seconds, a minute, 2 minutes, and it stays pretty well locked. Then we go into a version of this that's the entirety of the groove. We're going to add the snare drum. Here's what it sounds like. The other thing I want you to practice, you really do need to spend time with this. You need to take any one of these exercises and start in your comfort zone. That was my comfort zone volume I just played for you. But what you want to do is you want to bring it down to just a whisper. You want to see what kind of adjustments you need to make to keep that groove exercise in perfect alignment down through your lower dynamic ranges. And then you're gradually going to bring it up to just about as loud as you can play. It's going to do some different things as you play loud or soft. Let me show you what that's going to be like. All right, so one of the things that you're going to notice immediately as you get louder or softer are the adjustments that you need to make and how you're feeling the time and where you're placing these notes. Because you think about it, if we're playing the hi-hat at this dynamic range, there's a certain speed that the stick has to travel to get from here down to the hi-hat and back up to where it started. Now, as I play softer, I've got less distance to go, so the stick actually travels slower to play softer. As I'm playing louder, and I've got to go from, say, up here with my hi-hat hand down to the hi-hat and back up again, I actually have to travel faster to get this stick to go down and up in the same amount of musical time. The actual speed of my stick is going to change as I get louder or softer. It's the reason why anytime I hear weekend warriors or guys at a jam session that are accountants during the week or whatever, when they've got, all of a sudden the band gets softer or somebody turns around and goes, softer, they'll get softer, and all of a sudden the time will sag and things will slow down. Or as they get into, let's say it's a blues jam and the guitar player's really starting to get cooking, man. He's really playing a lot over there, and after there are 2, 3, or 4 choruses into a guitar solo, it's just getting louder and louder, but the tempos are actually also at the same time just ramping up and ramping up. So they're actually faster, sometimes by 5 or 10 clicks than when they started that guitar solo. You get to the end of that solo and then you got to suddenly just break the whole thing down to nothing. Then the time really gets wonky because you got super fast compared to where you're at, and now it's going to naturally want to slow down. Well, those are the kinds of things that in the practice room, we need to pay attention to those so that we can fight those tendencies. I mean, it's just our body reacting the way that it would to the natural physics of playing. If you look at any professional drummer, no matter whether they're playing soft or loud or somewhere in the middle, over the course of an entire tune, unless it's meant to speed up or slow down, most any professional drummer you're gonna look at, that time's not gonna vary. And if it varies, it ain't by much, maybe 1 BPM up or down. The one thing that I can always tell that's the difference between a professional drummer and someone who doesn't do this for a living is that ability to hold the band steady at a pre-selected tempo, regardless of where the song's going dynamically. They're able to really find that internal pulse for the song and keep that thing locked down. Now, one other thing to be careful of as we get into these other rhythms is that note placement inside the beat. Let me give you an example of the wrong way to play exercise B, and then you're going to gradually hear me line it up into the more correct way to play it. So you'll notice at the very beginning, I started with the E of the beat swinging way too much. I was behind where the E of the beat was in the click. And so it had this almost flamming effect with the metronome. And so gradually what I had to do is I had to bring that thing into alignment, almost like focusing a movie projector or something. It's like trying to focus that thing so that the picture is in complete alignment so that my E of the beat and the E of the beat in the metronome were exactly the same. And that's what I see in a lot of students. Like they get to level 1 of this exercise, which is just the choreography of it, being able to put that bass drum in between the hi-hats to play the E of the beat. But then the alignment, neither is it consistent with the click track, and it's not consistent with the actual subdivision we're trying to play. Not that swinging that is it's not a bad thing. It's just that we've got to be intentional. We're intentionally trying to keep those 16th notes super straight. And so if I want to swing them, I want to be able to have the ability to lay that thing back on purpose a pre-selected amount of time so that it swings consistently. That's a whole other lesson for another time. But being able to put notes like the E of the beat exactly where you want them, exactly the same way, beat to beat, bar to bar, phrase to phrase. That really is one of the hallmarks of a seasoned, experienced, and mature musician. Now, what we're talking about is consistency and repeatability. That, to me, is what great pocket means. Being able to place these notes exactly where they need to go and be able to do it every single bar, for the entirety of a phrase, for the entirety of a verse, for the entirety of a chorus, for the entirety of a song, for 3 minutes, 4 minutes, 5 minutes, being able to select where that pocket needs to be, where those notes need to fall, and then being able to execute that with a high degree of accuracy. That's what great pocket is. And it's that attention to detail, that focus and commitment to the pocket, that really is what's going to get your playing better over time. And any of the things that you learn, hopefully you put this much attention into them. You know, this instrument is fun to play if you just have a pair of sticks and a drum set in front of you. But it gets super fun to play when you've got these skills locked down. When you get really good in this way on this instrument, it gets really fun. So now let's talk about tempo goals. I want you to start at 50 or 60 beats a minute, and you're gradually going to work this thing up to at least 80 beats a minute. If you can get to 100 beats a minute, even better. We're only pushing for tempo because we want to be able to play these rhythms at any tempo of song that we may need to play them at. The speed is not some kind of party trick or something we can do to impress our friends. It's really just developing the skills that you're going to need to play any song at any time. All right, so real quickly, I'm going to run through just a few of these other rhythms so that you can hear what they sound like at 60 beats a minute against the click. I'm going to play a few of the 2-note bass drum rhythms and a few of the 3-note bass drum rhythms as well. Now, because I like to tie any of these things that I teach into some actual music, here's a clip of me playing a song that actually uses some of the rhythms that you're going to find on this PDF. So there you go. There's an entire sheet's worth of these rhythms that you can practice. The link to download that is just below. And really spend time with this stuff. Really sit and work on that consistency, that repeatability. This is the kind of thing that's going to make your playing so much better that other musicians are going to want you on their gig. They're going to want you in their band. They're going to want you on your session. These are the kinds of things that if you practice these are going to get you good at the drums. Not some crazy-ass 30-second note linear lick that you spend 6 months trying to learn just so you make an Instagram video out of it. These kind of exercises are going to do some incredible things for your playing, and I guarantee you if you spend time on them, you're going to see some noticeable differences in how you play grooves on gigs, in sessions, even just in jam sessions with other musicians. You're going to be shocked at how much easier it's going to be to bring the band to the center of wherever the groove needs to sit, and you're just going to have them in the palm of your hand the entire time. And if you dig this video, make sure you hit the subscribe below, hit the little like, thumbs up, give me a thumbs up, leave a comment or question at the bottom. My April goal is to try and hit 1,000 subscribers. And if you're not already subscribed, you should be. We're going to be doing a whole lot more videos like this, actionable, practicable things that you can do today that are going to make your playing better immediately and over time. It's really just going to give you exactly what you need to be the kind of drummer that other musicians want to play with. I thank you so much for your time. Thanks for hanging out with me. Be awesome to everybody. Be awesome to yourself. And until next time, I'll see you when I see you. Thanks.